let's go ahead and start. Carissa, could you introduce yourself to begin?
Sure. Hi, I'm Carissa. I am currently in southern Spain. I graduated from Washington University in St. Louis in 2019 with a major in graphic design and a minor in Spanish. Came over to Spain. And my team here does media ministry to closed countries where we can't physically preach the gospel because it's often illegal. So we have a social media ministry, we have websites, and most of what we do is creating videos, creating different types of creative media that can reach out to these people, start conversations with them. And then people reach out, we have a follow-up team who converses with them in their native languages, and we just let people from afar that way help to build up the underground church. And we have a Spanish ministry that uses creative media and counseling to reach out to victims of different kinds of abuse and to build up the church in Spain.
Awesome. Thanks, Carissa. Pam, why don't you go next?
Sure. I'm Pam Wilson, and my husband Dave and I, we direct a ministry called Taco. Has nothing to do with Mexican food, but it does have to do with using the creative arts to specifically reach out to Muslims with the gospel. We do a lot of street evangelism in places that think that you can't do it, but using the creative arts actually does make an inroad for both scripture engagement and engaging the gospel in many different countries where Muslims are. We don't work just actually in Muslim countries, but right now in the last few years, we've been working a lot with church planting efforts amongst refugees and Muslim immigrants in Europe as well. So we use all sorts of different art forms. Our logo is a kaleidoscope, and I just think it's such a beautiful picture of how God takes everyone's individual creativity that is uniquely in them. And like a kaleidoscope, you put those different colors together and it makes a new picture every time. So our team is different every year by depending on who God brings us, the kinds of things that we can do.
Awesome. And Shah, what about you?
Hi, I'm Shaw. I'm from Australia. I trained as a ballet dancer in Australia a long time ago, and worked as a ballet dancer in Ireland and in Germany and in Asia, and later as a musical theatre performer. And for the last 4 years, I've been leading a performing arts ministry in Berlin called the Limelight Collective, and it's a ministry that's run by the Salvation Army. And basically it's seeing how we can leverage performing arts and other types of art, meanwhile, to reach people, to share the gospel, and to facilitate people encountering Christ.
Yeah, awesome. And so for all of you Americans, the Salvation Army in non-America, the Salvation Army is like a church denomination like normal. Here we just think of it as a charity, but especially in Europe and elsewhere, it is actually like a church. Just to clarify, because that confused me when I first learned that. To introduce myself, my name is Melody. I am a GoCorps coach and a mobilizer. And I am also a GoCorps alumni. So I served for 2 years in Berlin with Shaw. I was a dance major, and so it was great to go to Berlin to dance and to learn about arts ministry there. Let's just begin. So kind of a first question to set the stage. Are the arts actually important in the world of missions? Like, would it be better if we just all learned how to be doctors or English teachers or something? What do you guys think?
I can answer this one. I think first on a functional level, artists bring a different mindset to missions. So they think creatively, they're learning to innovate. And especially in the missions field where there are a lot of problems that come up, there's a lot of change. You really need people that can think on their feet, that can make the most of limited resources. I think another thing is that the artist community is often very overlooked by the church or not thought of as an unreached people group, but artists are a lot of people who are really searching for truth, who gather together. So I think around the world, there's a lot of artist communities where you as an artist could really tap in, like bring light, bring truth, bring the gospel to these people. And then I think on top of that, art itself is a form of missions. I think artists are inherently bridge builders. We tend to occupy the space between what is and what could be with showing the world as it could be, as God designed it to be. And so we use our art as a way to connect with people that other things might not necessarily be able to do. I think because of this, you often see artists at the forefront of change. So I think through that, art helps people to see God in unique ways, because I think doctors and teachers are really important, with helping people care for their bodies and their minds. But at the same time, I think artists help people to care for their souls, to see beauty, helps people to be interrupted from their daily lives, which catches them off guard. And then when they're caught off guard by seeing something that's art, that's beautiful, or that is not what's normal, then God can really speak into that, can grab their attention in a new way. So I think art helps to bring about God's redemption in that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for answering that, Carissa. I think that's exactly right. Yeah, arts just give you a different perspective at things, and helps meet people in a different place. And that, yeah, many artists are kind of an unreached people group in many ways. So something that a lot of people ask me, I was a dance major in college, so I had spent 20-ish years learning to dance, and then I got a college education, and then I said, yes. And so then I said, speakers, we were just asked if we could speak a little bit more slowly. We were having some trouble understanding. So yeah, I was in college, and people told me when I said I was going to go to Berlin to dance, they said, you're going to waste all of that training. You're going to waste 4 years in college to go somewhere else. And that was something that I really struggled with. So what do you think you guys would say to somebody who says, but aren't I just wasting my talent?
You know, like, so I think there's nothing higher that we can do with our skills and our talents than to use them for the kingdom of God, and to use them for the Lord. I think that's a higher calling, or you know, that's a beautiful thing to do. You know, I had the privilege of dancing in front of royalty in Malaysia, and it wasn't much, right? Like it's a 2-minute piece, and it was not a hard piece, and you know, it's not much to write home about. But it's something that stays on my CV. It stays on my bio till now, because you know, dancing for royalty is a privilege, and so for me as an artist, I feel like when we have that, it's a privilege to be able to use our training for the kingdom of God, and the kingdom and the mission, they need it. It's no less important to have highly trained artists, dancers, musicians working for the kingdom of God than it is to have highly trained surgeons and nurses and teachers and theologians who are also doing the same thing. It's something where if you do it badly, people are going to know it's done badly, and if you do it well, it helps us. I guess it helps us communicate in a way that is effective to the world, and you know, the world has high standards. People are used to seeing Hollywood, that they're used to seeing you know, all this money that's poured into the advertising industry, and I feel if the world is communicating at this high level, then the kingdom of God certainly needs to be communicating at a high level, and it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I also know, because so in college, I was a dance major, but you also take a lot of other classes, right? Dance history and pedagogy and all of those. And those are also skills that I was able to use with Shaw and Limelight. We taught and we set up performances, and you had to do a lot more than just dance. And so I did find that it was really valuable for me that I did go to college, that I did have a diverse education. I didn't only know how to do just one thing. It was really helpful. So
even all the experience you had with stage lighting and you know, all the side hustles that you have to do when you're a performer, that turned out to be really invaluable in a way that you possibly never expected when you were learning it.
Yes, I definitely never expected to light a very non-traditional space in Berlin in what is essentially the basement of a building while I was learning how to light stages, but it helped, guys. So yeah, cool. Pam, so you work with such a diverse team of artists. How have you seen God use all sorts of different skills and passions for his glory on your team?
Well, like I was saying about our kaleidoscope sort of motif and that we use for a logo and sort of we use as a theme on our team, we basically take everybody from year by year, who's God given us and what can we do to put these things together. And as a result of that, the most unbelievable things have come out. I want to say hi to the PBA group. We had a PBA alumni on our team for 3 years. She came first on a short term while she was still at PBA. And while she was on the team, a guy contacted us to say, I do pyrotechnics. Is there anything I can do on your team? And we thought, sure, why not? So he came and we were able to incorporate, we did a creation dance and music production that used his pyrotechnics while we had dance and music involved. And so we have a guy on the team as a result of the kind of different art forms that we've had on the team who've written the shared stories, some of the shared stories that exist in both the Bible and the Quran as a way to engage people into the story, 3 or 4 biblical stories. And we have used 5 or 6 different art forms in those productions that have brought huge crowds to watch, actually, including the people that would never actually watch something that they thought was a Christian outreach to them, but they can recognize the story from their holy book. And it's really been powerful.
Yeah, that's really cool. Pam, could you just quickly call out a couple different college majors that you've had serve on your team before?
Yeah, so we've had PBA, we've had Belhaven, we've had Wheaton, Biola, Moody, and then lots of secular universities as well.
Yeah, awesome. So another question for you, Shaw. As you made the transition from being a professional dancer and performer to suddenly leading this ministry in Berlin, how did you decide to make that transition to kind of leave professional performing life to go into full-time ministry?
Yeah, it started with an injury. I tore a ligament in my knee and couldn't dance for a little while, and it's the kind of thing that happens that's actually tragic, but in that moment I had so much peace because I thought, okay, God has a process in this that he wants to go through with me, and this looks so bad, but it must be something that's going to change my life in a good way, because the Lord has good plans for me. And so that led to sort of about a half a year of soul searching, and I came to the conclusion that God said, you know what, it had been on the cards forever, but God said, you know, it's finally time to take everything that you've learned, all the skills and experiences that you've learned in this theater world, and bring them into my kingdom and use them for my kingdom. And so I got in touch with my church leadership and said, hey, listen, God's calling me to do something. I dreamt, what could this be? You know, if I could have any ministry I want, what would it look like? And God opened doors, and people said, yeah, sure, here's a space, go do it, go make it happen. And so for me, it was a lot about looking forward. Okay, God's calling me into something. I never really had the feeling that God was calling me out of dance, but he was calling me into something new. And as it happened, I don't dance as much as I used to. It was a bit of a sort of a sliding transition, but I still do a couple of things here and there in the professional dance community, and I feel that's important for me, not just personally, but for my ministry to stay connected with the secular scene. For me, it was always about looking forward to the new thing that God is doing, rather than the painful sort of looking back and what I'm losing, or what I'm saying goodbye to. And that's not always easy, right? Like that. Obviously, there are moments where I think, I guess I miss being in training, or I miss being on stage so much, and what God is calling me, the new thing that God is calling me to, is so much more fulfilling, and so much, it's what I feel God has been preparing me for my whole life. It was a process that took a lot of searching, and really working out what God's saying to me. But once I knew I wanted to follow God and do what He has to say.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Shal. And so Carissa, kind of similarly for you, you made the transition from being a student to being full-time on the field. How did you make that decision? And then how have you seen like things that you learned in school come into what you do in your ministry?
Yeah, I think one struggle that I did have throughout college, especially into senior year, was I feel like I'm a creative. I feel really passionate about this. And I also am really passionate about missions and bridge building. Is God calling me? Is He asking me to give up this part of who He made me to be as an artist to do missions? And through a bunch of different circumstances that I would say were God working in my life, I found GoCore, and I found this placement in Spain where I also got to use my Spanish, which was really cool. I think it was like a really natural thing of, I don't know if I got any neon signs from God that I was necessarily waiting for, but it was just, these are all the passions that I've given you, and I've lined up this opportunity. You don't have to know what's 50 years down the road, but you can step into this opportunity right now. In terms of applying skills on the field, I think I had two different fears thinking about coming here. One was, am I going to be, like Melody said, wasting my talents? Like, will my classmates get ahead with these like fancy jobs in New York? And then the other side of that, which is like the opposite line of thinking, was, am I even good enough to do this? So I think through both of those, God has shown me that He's put me here at the right time. We actually had a graphic designer of 20 years leave our mission placement about the time that I came. And they had a bunch of big graphic design projects lined up that I didn't really feel qualified to do. Like we had to do 2 major rebrands. I directed an animated video. I designed a new website that we launched this past year to our unreached countries. So I think in all of these, God was showing me, I gave you enough to put you here. Like my supervisor one day was almost crying. She was like, I feel like God just provided us with you. And I guess it's hard to not trust that God's putting me in this place and to trust that He's given me the abilities that I need to do what He's asking me to do. And on the other hand, I think one thing that my friends in New York might not necessarily get is I got to be on so many different projects, try so many things and learn so much. Like I learned how to code, I learned how to animate. And I think the missions field gave me a lot of flexibility to learn and grow. And they gave me a lot of grace in that. Like they really supported me. And so that's been really cool to see God teach me so much as I've been learning so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So could each of you share just like one quick couple-minute story about how you've seen God work through your art, a story of a performance or a video or a class time, just a story of how you've seen God work through your art and your passion.
I was going to tell a story about somebody on the team, but actually I will tell a personal story. When I first went to Turkey, and it was been quite a few years now, and it was an emerging church that had no really much of any hymnody and no hymnal at all. And I came to Christ after I had graduated my degrees in orchestra conducting, and it was classical music was so much, I would say, an idol in my life at that time that I had to actually completely lay it aside to follow Jesus. And that's what I think it was important at that time. But through seeing this need, and when people in Turkey found out that I had this background, they said, couldn't you please put a hymnal together? And so I felt God giving it back to me at that point. And so I spent a couple of years going around with my microphone recording anybody who had sort of had songs in Turkey and also in Germany, and was able to put the first and what is now the only hymnal together. It's like it's in its 7th edition now. And since the invention of the data projector, hymnals have a different place. But then through that, we were able to start Ask Taco, the first training, and really what is still now pretty much the only training for Turkish creatives and worship leaders. So we have a camp that and they feel very strongly about it now, that it's their people when they come together to every year we have this camp that trains in worship and in worship leading, but also how to be a creative, how to be an artist for the Lord. So there's a great Turkish sculptor who's a believer, who's been an important part of that camp. And a real highlight for me is that it was all our team members who were the teachers and the trainers the first year. Now it's 80% Turks who are doing the leading and training. And now nobody really remembers that our team started this camp. It's so much a part of the Turkish church owns it. So that's an exciting thing for me personally.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Pam. What about another story?
We had the privilege of working with a couple of professional dancers for a project in summer 2019. And, you know, 2020 was a bit difficult for performers across the board. And for us, we had to cancel a couple of projects. And but through the Salvation Army, through some donations that came in, we had the opportunity to provide some grants for performing artists who had, you know, who were struggling through because of the pandemic. And so what we were able to do was provide a space in our window to the street for people to perform for no audience or for whoever just happened to be walking by. We streamed it in the internet, in the Facebook, and we kind of invited some of these artists. Some of them were believers, a lot of them weren't, to perform something, create something, whatever they like. You've got half an hour to perform, and we'll pay you for it. Because that's the way that we thought was, you know, the thing that would help artists the most. And a lot of people's like, is there a theme? You know, do we have to, you know, follow some guidelines? And we wanted to make it broad. We gave a list of keywords. One of them was faith. And so there were two young ladies two dancers that we had worked with in the previous year, and they were looking at this list, and we were thinking they were going to pick something Christmassy like joy or hope or whatever, and they decided, hey, you know what? Let's do faith. And so this one of these young ladies was Jewish, and the other one grew up Roman Catholic, but they actually thanked me and said, hey, sure, it's actually really great for me to be able to reconnect with my faith. They created this dance piece about the physicality of the faith tradition they grew up in. And listen, I don't know if reconnect with my faith means the same thing for her as I would hope for it to mean, but I think there's still something in there that you know, in providing this space, we're able to give these people the opportunity to think back to the experiences they've had of faith, of their respective faiths as children, and to invite them to work through that, and I hope and pray that you know what they did through this piece that we invited them to create, that will continue to have ripples in their lives.
Yeah, that's really cool. You can watch those videos that Shaw just talked about on their Facebook page, The Limelight Collective, if you want to see any of them. But what about you, Carissa? Do you have a story for us?
Yeah, I think one thing about my ministry is we actually don't see a lot of the results or the people that we're impacting because we're doing so much like on a covert level and across an ocean. But one video that we shot recently last year was, we hear a lot of testimonies from people on our page where they're talking to us and then they experience visions, because that's a big part of their culture. So like over and over again, we would just hear the words, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the way. I think the number 3 is also very significant in that culture. So many times they hear the phrase, I am the way 3 times. And that in conjunction with talking with us, with like finding our videos and other sources too, like other media sources from other Christian organizations, has brought a lot of people to Christ, which is really cool. So we did this video shoot around how do we take these words and really bring them to life, bring them into a narrative, into something that people can follow in sequence. So we created a narrative of a young boy from one of these countries whose father died. And so he takes on the responsibility of his family. At the same time, he keeps having these visions about Jesus. He keeps hearing, I am the way on the radio or in his dreams. And then he eventually comes and knocks at a door and finds Christ. And so we're launching this video series in a few weeks. And we're praying that these words, since we've heard so many testimonies with these words, would really connect with our audience in a new way and just really grab their attention and get them to think about God in a new way.
Cool. Thanks, Carissa. Yeah, so I also wanted to take a second to kind of very briefly share my story. So as I said, I was in college, I was a dance major, and I was not planning on going to the mission field at all. That was not in my plan. I was planning on going to a dance company because I was like, I'm in college, might as well. And then my junior year, the Lord changed my mind. He kind of smacked me up the side of the head with, that's not what you want, Melody, and that is not what I want for you. And I didn't know what I was interested in doing. I had always loved ministry. I'd had a lot of different arts ministry opportunities growing up and in high school. So I looked for like maybe a short-term summer thing, but the Lord brought me to GoCore. And he showed me this team in Berlin that was using arts to build relationships with people that would lead to gospel conversations. And even though initially I was like, that's cool, I don't really want to do that, thanks. The Lord brought me on this journey of showing me that like, no, like this is what I have prepared for you. This is what I am calling you to do. And through that process, I went from saying, oh, not super interested, but like, we'll see, to 100% saying, absolutely, this is what I know that I'm called to do. And so I loved my experience in Berlin. And so that's kind of the point of GoCore, is that we help recent grads and 20-somethings connect their passion, their major, with a placement overseas. For me, that was dance. And so I said, I really want to use dance overseas. For Carissa, it was art, graphic design, media. And that was what she really wanted to use overseas. And that's the door that the Lord opened up. And so that's what we do. Any major, I know we mostly have arts majors here. So whether you're a piano performance major or a dance major or a graphic design, or I don't think pyrotechnics is something you can major in, but apparently that is something that can be used in ministry. So like literally there is anything, and we want to send you. We send goers in the fall as well as in the winter. Our application is open now. Talk about that a little more just right at the end. But I just kind of wanted to share that, like, if as you're listening to these three amazing people talk about their ministry, like these are ministries that you can join now. Like this year, you could get there by September or January. Like these are open, these are opportunities that you have. And so with that said, let's do some questions now. I got a couple questions. So let's just say the first question, what advice do you have for people who are looking to get onto the mission field? Anybody want to take that one?
So for me, I had a calling, and I spoke to the people who were around me. I spoke to the leadership in my denomination and talked to them about my calling, and it came out of that. Having said that, it was a domestic mission. I was already living in Germany at the time, on the other side of Germany, but in Germany, and you know, so it wasn't about going across the ocean to the big wide world. But yeah, if you're in a church, if you're in a denomination, there will be contacts and there will be opportunities for ministry there. And if there aren't, you know, you'll find people. Ask around.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, always, like, churches have so many great connections. That's always a great place to start if you're interested in going overseas, is talk to your church. Even if you go with a different organization, like your church wants to be part of that with you. They want to send you, and that's definitely something that we as GoCore believe, that like your church should absolutely be on this journey with you. So we have a question for Pam. So a student has asked, who is a theater artist, what sort of unique theater arts have you experienced in your time overseas?
Well, I've experienced a lot of different ones as a observer and as an attender, but the kind of ones that we use, because we do a lot of things on the street, we put small plays and various things together that have both been, well, we've done different kinds of theater actually, because sometimes we have people coming in for short terms. We use short-termers in a very effective way, we feel, on our team. And because people can come with their arts who don't have the possibility to maybe possibly move overseas at that point. but they don't speak the language in the country that we're necessarily in or ministering to. And like I said, we've ministered in probably 20 different countries up to now. So we've seen mime be really effective. I still remember one early time on our team where we were working very closely with the Bible correspondence course in Turkey, and we were inviting people who were involved in some of the courses they were doing to performances that we had. And this one guy named Mehmet, I remember, because often people in the Bible correspondence course were either very quickly interested and then quickly not interested after that, or they came to faith, but you didn't have somebody who kind of did course after course and without making really a decision or still kind of thinking. And this guy Mehmet was one of those people, and he came to a performance of a mime thing that we did. And the person who was playing the role of Christ was in a white tuxedo. And Mehmet told me the story later. And part of the play was that he took his hands and he made the form of a cross, and then he pulled it apart and stepped through it. And Mehmet said that was the moment where he understood the gospel. And he prayed to receive the Lord actually right there at that performance after having been studying for a while. So that showed me the power of how mime has been very important. We've also done some of these stand-up things where we've brought people in from the crowd to actually do sort of a spontaneous types of plays where they're bringing in their own ideas and thoughts. You have to have people who speak the language to do that. But we've also done some of our scripture stories that we've talked about. We've been incorporated puppets and dance and music and theater all in the same thing. So we've seen just lots of different variety in the different kinds of things that can be used in that way.
That's really cool. Thanks, Pam. So we're getting a lot of questions right now. So I just want to thank everybody for your questions. And I'm going to say now, like, we're not going to have time to get to all of those. So we're going to do like 2 more. And then if you have other questions later, please contact me, send me an email, send me a text. We'll get connected, we'll chat. But so Carissa, a quick question for you. I know this is a really hard question, but what does a day in the life look like?
Yeah, I guess I do have a normal work schedule, because that's the interesting thing about my position is there's like 30 of us, which is very large for a team. So we're kind of like half office, half missions team. So usually I get up, I come to work, we have prayer time every morning. We do speak 3 languages on our team, so it's usually at least bilingual, if not trilingual. And then throughout the day, it depends. Sometimes there's video shoots, sometimes I'm working on graphic design stuff, sometimes I'm doing illustration and paper cutting type stuff. Sometimes we're doing a lot of meetings. And then in the evening, because we have Spanish siesta, of course, so, well, at least before COVID, now we have a lot of curfews and restrictions, that changes it a lot. But before COVID, everybody would go home from 2 to 4. A lot of people on my team would nap, and then you come back into the office. And then in the evenings, I try to be intentional about connecting with the Spanish community. So like reaching out to Spanish friends, meeting up with people, or setting aside time to work on my art, kind of trying to balance those 2.
Cool. Thanks, Carissa. Yeah, day in life is always a tough question because days often look really different, but thanks for giving us just kind of an idea of what that looks like. Shaw, I know that your days look super different. Pam, I'm sure that your days also look different, especially depending on whether you're on like in the States or touring or somewhere else. But so a couple people have asked what other countries GoCore has arts teams in. So I just wanted to read all of the arts track placements that we currently have available with GoCore, just to give you a little bit of a picture. So we have artist performer in West Asia. We have creative and performing arts in Germany, that's Shaw's team. We have the creative innovator in Spain. We have a digital media ministry consultant in South Asia. We have an ethnomusicologist musician in South Asia. We have lead storytellers in Spain. I believe that's Carissa's team. We have media outreach to closed countries in Spain. That is definitely Carissa's team. There it is. We have photography for nonprofits and outreaches in Germany, social media communications specialists in Mexico, sound engineers in West Asia, sound lighting technicians in Germany, and storytellers and photographers in North Africa. That first one that I read, the artist performer in West Asia, that's Pam's team. So there's just a huge diverse, a lot of different diverse teams that we have. And a couple people have also asked, what is the process like? So the process for any GoCore team is to fill out the GoCore application. So if you are a senior or if you are already graduated, this is the time to apply. Our first application deadline is March 1st, which is in a month. So super soon. So if you're interested just in learning more, it's not saying, yes, I definitely want to go. It's saying, maybe this is the door that the Lord is opening for me. My suggestion is to fill out the application. You can also, if you're not ready for that, or if you maybe think you are, but you're not sure, or you're just an underclassman and you have more questions, or I didn't get to answer your question, you can reach out to talk with a GoCore coach or to talk with me personally. So I have just put links in the chat there. There's the application link if you're ready to apply. If you want to talk to a coach, either me or Bree or one of our other awesome coaches, you can fill out that form. Or please, oh, I typed my phone number in wrong. That's awkward, isn't it? Or if you want to reach out to me directly, you can do so. That is my correct phone number, 3605. So feel free to send me a text or an email. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Once again, if you are interested just in taking a step and learning more, reach out, contact me, talk to someone. That is the best way. That is when I wasn't sure whether I was going to go or not, I was like, let me talk to somebody from GoCore and see what this could look like. So yeah, I think maybe we have time for just one more question. So for anybody, what advice would you give for someone who is looking at how to figure out what exactly the Lord is calling them to, what door the Lord is opening, or for somebody saying, okay, yes, I do think I want to go. What advice would you give to anybody on this call who's thinking about going into missions using their art? You can get a couple different answers to this one also. Who feels inspired?
Well, I think like Shaw said before, talking to your church is a good first step. Talking to people who you've been in ministry with in the States or wherever you are, if people are calling in from other countries, it's good to make sure that you've been actually active in ministry in wherever your home country is first, because if it's not something that you're doing now, it's going to be not as easy a fit when you actually get overseas. Talk to somebody about your spiritual gifting as well as your creative arts. What other kinds of, whether you've done Enneagram and Myers-Briggs, kind of look at a grow in self-awareness. I would say knowing who you are is really a helpful thing when you're joining a team, for example. Self-awareness is such a great skill to have, and getting along with other people, knowing what's going to be a stressful situation for you, what's not going to be a stressful situation, the kind of things God has already built into you that he's going to pull out of you to use in different places overseas. And then use the internet so much. One of our longest term team member, he's been 18 years with us now on the team. He came as a single guy. He's now married with 3 kids. He was sure that nowhere in the world could he both feel God was called. He's a professional guitar player, but he felt God was calling him to work with Muslims. He wanted to do both and was sure that it was impossible. And he basically just went music, Muslims, mission, and out we popped, and which is one of the few places that he could actually do that. So definitely use the internet to get in contact. Right now, it's the world's changing so much in missions, and it used to be lots of big denominational missions or bigger organizations. Now it's a world of what I call boutique missions. There's lots and lots of small ones that fill a very unique niche and gap in different ways that might just be the perfect place for you, or maybe one of the bigger ones is a great place for you too. And it's good that GoCore is a wonderful way, if you're a student, to actually enter that world too, and a way to try it out for 2 years.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. I also just want to offer a word of encouragement and kind of advice for anyone who is thinking like, I really love the arts, I really love missions, I kind of want to do that, but also I don't want to give up a career. I still want to be in a dance company. I still want to be a professional performer. I want to get my master's in performance or whatever that is. Like, all of our GoCore commitments, at least, are 2 years long. And that is not that long in the grand scheme of things. And you don't have to give up your career and your life and your professional aspirations to give 2 years to missions. That was a question that I had when I left for Berlin. I remember praying and saying, will I ever actually dance again? I was hoping to dance in Berlin, but that was not even a given. Nothing is a given when you're going on the field. And I remember praying that and wondering what would happen. I did get to dance in Berlin. And then when I got back from Berlin, I had the enormous blessing of getting to dance with a company last year. We're shut down because of COVID, but I did still get that opportunity to experience the professional world. It was a smaller company. You might not be going to, New York City Ballet, but I still got to dance professionally, and I got to dance with a really lovely regional company that I loved. And so you're not giving up that experience. You are giving 2 years to God. Sometimes we'll say you're like tithing your career, giving 10% of a 20-year career to the Lord. And you're just doing that first, because sometimes if you save it for later never comes. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. Shaw, would you be willing to kind of pray us out?
I'd be honored. Creator God, thank you that you have made us in your image. Thank you that you call us to be creators like you are in this world. God, thank you that you've sent us into this world to make something out of it. And thank you that we have the privilege of being called to serve you in this world with all the gifts and skills and experiences that we have, whether that's at home, whether that's in the whatever industry we're in, or whether it's in professional full-time missions. God, we want to thank you that you are a God that speaks. You're a God that calls, that you are not silent. You do not leave us alone to work things out. We are not orphans, but you are a Father who loves us. You are a good shepherd. You know how to guide your sheep. And so I want to pray for each and every one of us, each and every person on this call who is seeking your will, who is seeking what you want to do with them and in them and through them in their lives. And I want to really ask that you come near to them, that you reveal yourself, that you reveal your plans, that you reveal, even if it's just the next step, God. Yeah, God, that you make yourself known. God, we ask that you would put your seal on this conversation. We ask that you would send workers to the harvest, because the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And so we thank you, God, that you're doing this. We praise you, and we say, Jesus, your kingdom come. In your name we pray.